What if I told you that every time you've held a dollar bill in your hands, you've actually been touching crystallized faith, and that the reason money seems to slip through your fingers isn't because of the economy, your job, or even your spending habits, but because you've never learned to speak to money as the spiritual substance it truly is. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. Has this ever happened to you? You receive money, perhaps a paycheck, a gift, or even found cash, and there's this immediate anxiety that washes over you. Not excitement, not gratitude, but a subtle fear that whispers, "This won't last," or "I better hold on to this tight because it might be the last." Most people experience this, yet they never question why money feels so elusive, so temporary, so resistant to their deepest desires for abundance. Here's what. The world has never taught you. Money is not paper. It's not ink printed by governments or numbers dancing across your banking app. Money is condensed belief, crystallized energy, and divine substance compressed into visible form. When Florence Scovel Shinn, one of the most profound spiritual teachers of the early 20th century, first spoke these words, she wasn't offering metaphorical poetry. She was revealing a fundamental law of the universe that most people stumble through life never understanding. Think about this for a moment. Have you ever noticed that some people seem to effortlessly attract money, while others work twice as hard, yet struggle to make ends meet? The difference isn't luck, education, or even opportunity. The difference lies in how they relate to money itself. One group unconsciously treats money as spiritual substance that responds to faith and declaration, while the other approaches it as mere material object subject to worldly limitations. What you're about to discover might surprise you, but there's a sacred stillness that descends when you truly hold physical cash, not with the trembling hands of fear or the desperate grip of scarcity, but with the recognition that what you're touching is mind in form. This isn't some mystical concept reserved for spiritual gurus. This is practical wisdom that can transform your financial reality starting today. Stay with me until the end, because I'm going to share with you the exact words Florence Scovel Shinn taught people to speak over their money. Words that turned a woman's last $2 into $6,000. Words that transformed rent anxiety into abundant provision. Words that shifted people from financial victims into spiritual masters of divine circulation. The sacred quality you feel when holding money isn't imagination, it's recognition. You're not holding currency, you're holding condensed conviction waiting for instruction. And the instruction it receives depends entirely on whether you approach it with the consciousness of lack or the authority of faith. Right now, as you're watching this, if you have any cash nearby, even a single dollar, something is about to shift in how you perceive that bill forever. If these principles are sparking something inside you, if you're ready to dive deeper into how consciousness creates financial reality, then subscribe to this channel. I'm here consistently sharing the spiritual laws that govern abundance, and there's a whole community of people transforming their relationship with money through these teachings. Because here's the hidden truth that no financial advisor will ever tell you. It's not the love of money that keeps abundance away from most people. It's the fear of it. This revelation completely transforms everything you've been taught about wealth and prosperity. Most people carry an unconscious terror around being truly powerful with money. They've been programmed since childhood to believe that wealth corrupts, that good people shouldn't have too much, that money changes you for the worse. So even when opportunities for abundance present themselves, there's this internal sabotage mechanism that kicks in. You find yourself spending money too quickly, making poor financial decisions, or simply feeling guilty when you have more than enough. This fear creates what I call energetic barriers, invisible walls that repel the very thing you're consciously trying to attract. It's like trying to fill a bucket with holes in the bottom. No matter how hard you work or how many strategies you employ, the abundance leaks out through these unconscious patterns of fear and guilt. But transformation begins the moment you shift from shame to spiritual dominion. Instead of looking at money with inadequacy or embarrassment, you begin to recognize it as divine substance waiting for your instruction. This mindset shift isn't just philosophical. It creates measurable changes in your financial reality. Let me share a story that perfectly illustrates this principle in action. There was a woman who came to Florence Scovel Shinn with literally $2 to her name. $2. That was her entire financial reality. Most people in that situation would panic, would see those $2 as proof of their failure, their last desperate attempt at survival. But here's where the journey from scarcity to abundance truly begins. Instead of allowing her to treat those $2 as her final resource, Shinn guided her through a complete transformation of perspective. She learned to bless those $2 not as her last, but as her seed. She declared over that small amount, "You have the magic purse of spirit. It can never be depleted." The impact was immediate and profound. Instead of hoarding those dollars in fear, she began speaking to them as spiritual substance. She honored them as divine circulation rather than cursing them as evidence of lack. And here's what happened next. Within a short period, she received an unexpected gift of $6,000, not through manipulation or begging, but through the natural law of multiplication that responds to blessing rather than fear. This story reveals something crucial about how abundance actually works. The amount doesn't matter. The external circumstances don't determine your financial destiny. What matters is the consciousness you bring to whatever you currently hold. Whether it's $2 or $2,000, the spiritual principle remains the same. Now, I want to go even deeper into this transformation, because understanding why this works is just as important as knowing that it works. When you bless money instead of fearing it, you're actually changing your energetic frequency. Write in the comments, "I'm ready to bless my money," if this resonates with your experience. You're actually communicating with money as if it were a conscious entity, because in the realm of spiritual substance, it is. Every dollar you hold is essentially a servant awaiting instruction. This isn't some mystical concept that requires years of spiritual training to understand. It's a practical revelation that can shift your entire financial trajectory starting right now. Think about this journey you've been on with money. How many times have you held cash and said absolutely nothing? Most people treat money like it's an inanimate object, completely unaware that their silence is actually a form of instruction. When you dismiss money in silence, you're essentially telling it that you have no authority, no vision, no command over where it goes or how it multiplies. But here's the hidden truth behind every financial breakthrough. Money responds to conviction, not to your circumstances, not to your past failures, not even to the amount you currently hold. It responds to the authority and certainty with which you speak to it. This means that the person with $10 who speaks with divine conviction will experience more multiplication than someone with thousands who approaches their wealth with fear and uncertainty. The transformation happens when you realize that every interaction with money is a choice between two completely different realities. You can either command it with divine speech, treating it as spiritual substance that obeys your word, or you can continue the unconscious pattern of letting it flow through your life without any intentional direction. The choice you make in these moments literally determines your financial experience. This revelation leads us to what I call spiritual authorship over money. Most people have been living their financial lives as victims. Victims of the economy, victims of their circumstances, victims of their upbringing around money. But spiritual authorship means stepping into complete command rather than remaining trapped in financial superstition. When you develop the ability to hold money without flinching, when you can speak over it with absolute certainty rather than trembling hands and apologetic whispers, you're demonstrating something profound. You're showing that you understand your role as a master rather than allowing yourself to be controlled by financial fear. This isn't about positive thinking or wishful manifestation. This is about recognizing a fundamental truth about how the universe actually operates. Money, like everything else in creation, responds to consciousness. It flows toward authority and away from uncertainty. It multiplies under blessing and diminishes under curse. The impact of this understanding reaches far beyond your bank account. When you master your relationship with money through spiritual conviction, you're actually developing a mindset that transforms every area of your life. You begin to speak with authority over your health, your relationships, your opportunities. You stop being someone who hopes things will work out and become someone who declares how things will be. Behind The scenes of every financial miracle you've ever witnessed, you'll find this same principle at work. Someone chose to speak to their circumstances rather than being spoken to by them. Someone decided to bless their seed rather than mourn their situation. Write in the comments, "I choose spiritual authority," if you're ready to make this shift in your own financial journey. Because the most powerful transformation in your financial journey begins with a single declaration that completely rewrites your relationship with money. When you hold any amount of cash, whether it's your last $5 or a substantial sum, there's a phrase that instantly shifts you from scarcity consciousness to abundance reality. This is not my last, this is my first. These 7 words carry the power to transform money from a dead end into a doorway. Most people look at their current financial situation and see limitation, see evidence of what they lack, see proof that abundance isn't meant for them. But this declaration flips that entire narrative. Instead of treating money as your final resource, you begin to recognize it as your entry point into divine circulation. This mindset shift reveals something profound about how abundance actually works. When you declare, "This is my first," you're not denying your current circumstances. You're choosing to see them as the beginning of something greater, rather than the end of something tragic. You're positioning yourself as someone who receives regularly, rather than someone who struggles to survive. The impact of this single phrase reaches deep into your subconscious programming. Every time you've said, "This is my last," you've been programming scarcity into your nervous system. You've been training your mind to expect depletion rather than multiplication. But when you consciously choose to declare, "This is my first," you're literally rewiring decades of limitation thinking. If this content shifted something in your understanding, today, if you feel like you just received exactly what you needed to hear about money, a simple like tells me this message landed where it was meant to. It also helps these teachings reach others who are searching for the same transformation. Now, I want to reveal something that goes even deeper than mindset shifts and positive declarations. The reason these transformations work isn't because of psychology or personal development techniques. It works because of what money actually is at its core: essence. Here's a revelation that will fundamentally change how you see every dollar you touch. Money is not material. It's metaphysical. It's not a product of banks or governments or economic systems. Money is a projection of belief, crystallized faith made visible in physical form. When you understand money as spiritual substance rather than physical matter, everything changes. You stop trying to work with it according to earthly limitations and start operating according to divine law. You realize that the real source of money isn't your job, your investments, or even your business. The source is consciousness itself. This hidden truth explains why some people can start with nothing and create wealth, while others inherit fortune and lose it all. It's not about strategy or luck or timing. It's about understanding that money responds to spiritual frequency, not material manipulation. The decisions you make about money, the way you speak to it, the consciousness you bring to it, these determine its behavior in your life more than any external factor. When you treat money as mere paper and ink, it behaves according to material laws of scarcity and limitation. But when you recognize it as condensed belief, it responds according to spiritual laws of multiplication and expansion. This revelation opens up possibilities that most people never even consider. Instead of being limited by what you can see in your bank account, you start working with the invisible source from which all visible abundance flows. Write in the comments, "Money is spiritual substance," if this understanding is clicking for you. The journey into understanding money as spiritual substance leads us to one of the most profound revelations in all of Scripture. When Hebrews tells us that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, it's revealing something extraordinary about the nature of reality itself. Faith isn't just a feeling or a belief. It's literally substance, the raw material from which physical manifestation emerges. This transforms everything about how we perceive money. If faith is substance, then money is simply faith made usable, invisible reality pressed into tangible form that we can hold, exchange, and circulate. This understanding elevates your entire relationship with money from merely transactional to completely transformational. Most people interact with money through transactions. They give something to get something. They work to earn. They spend to acquire. But when you recognize money as faith crystallized, every interaction becomes an opportunity for spiritual transformation. You're not just handling currency. You're working with the visible evidence of invisible belief. This revelation explains why your mindset around money has such a direct impact on your financial reality. It's not because positive thinking magically creates cash. It's because money, being faith in form, naturally responds to the quality of faith from which it originated and the faith consciousness that touches it. Behind the scenes of every financial decision you make, there's a spiritual transaction happening. Your beliefs, your fears, your expectations, your declarations. These invisible factors are literally shaping the material outcome you experience. When you understand this connection, you stop being surprised by your financial patterns and start taking conscious control over them. Awakened souls begin to see money differently than the masses. Instead of viewing it as something to control, hoard, or chase, they recognize it as movement, as flow, as divine echo. Money becomes a reflection of how openly you allow divine circulation to move through your belief system. It responds to your spiritual vibration rather than your external appearances or circumstances. This shift in perception changes everything about how money shows up in your life. When you're vibrating fear, lack, or unworthiness, money reflects that frequency back to you through scarcity experiences. But when your spiritual vibration aligns with abundance, gratitude, and divine trust, money begins to flow in ways that seem almost miraculous to those still operating from material consciousness. The impact of this understanding extends far beyond personal finance. When you see money as divine echo, you realize that your financial life is actually a mirror showing you the state of your inner spiritual development. Every financial challenge becomes an invitation to examine and elevate your consciousness. Every unexpected blessing becomes confirmation that you're aligning with higher spiritual truth. This divine echo principle explains why some people seem to effortlessly attract abundance while others struggle despite their efforts. It's not about worthiness or luck or even hard work. It's about the frequency of consciousness that's echoing through their relationship with money. Write in the comments, "I see the divine echo," if you're beginning to recognize this spiritual mirror in your own financial experiences. This brings us to one of the most liberating truths about abundance. Your inner state literally determines your financial reality, regardless of what appears in your external circumstances. You could hold a blank check with no amount written on it and be infinitely richer in consciousness than someone clutching a stack of bills while vibrating fear and scarcity. The revelation here is profound. Substance doesn't respond to physical amounts. It responds to speech, to identity, to spiritual vibration. This means that the person with $5 who speaks to it with divine authority and treats it as holy seed will experience more multiplication than someone with thousands who approaches their wealth with anxiety and spiritual poverty. Your consciousness around money creates the container through which abundance can flow. When your inner state is aligned with prosperity, gratitude, and divine trust, you become a magnet for financial opportunities that seem to appear out of nowhere. But when your consciousness is contracted by fear, doubt, or unworthiness, even large amounts of money can slip through your fingers like water through a sieve. This understanding transforms your entire approach to building wealth. Instead of focusing solely on external strategies, the investments, the side hustles, the saving techniques, you begin to prioritize the transformation of your inner financial landscape. You realize that shifting your consciousness is the most practical thing you can do to change your financial reality. Now, let me share something that will revolutionize how you think about money movement. Money is not meant to be static. It's divine compensation in motion, designed to flow like blood through the circulatory system of human experience. Just as blood must circulate to bring life to every cell in your body, money must circulate to bring abundance to every area of your life. This circulation principle explains why hoarding money out of fear actually creates the opposite of security. When you try to stop the flow out of anxiety, you're working against the natural rhythm of abundance. Money flows toward where the heart is open, where gratitude lives, where blessing is spoken. It enters your life precisely where fear has been cast out and faith has taken residence. The impact of understanding money as circulation rather than possession changes everything about how you relate to it. Instead of clutching it desperately, you learn to hold it lightly. Instead of fearing its departure, you bless its journey. Instead of trying to control its movement, you become a conscious participant in divine flow. When you truly grasp this circulation concept, spending money becomes a spiritual act rather than a fearful loss. You begin to see every dollar that leaves your hands as a seed being planted in the universal field of abundance, destined to return, multiplied according to the blessing with which you released it. This journey of understanding reveals that behind every financial struggle lies a misunderstanding about the nature of flow itself. Write in the comments, "I embrace divine circulation," if you're ready to shift from holding to flowing with your money. The transformation deepens when you realize that every word you speak to or about money is actually programming its behavior in your life. Most people unconsciously curse money by calling it evil, elusive, or dirty. They speak about it as if it's the root of all problems, as if having it makes you greedy or corrupt. But here's what this unconscious cursing actually does. It repels the very abundance you're trying to attract. Instead of falling into this pattern of financial self-sabotage, there's a powerful declaration that completely rewrites your relationship with money. When you hold cash, speak to it directly. This money is spirit condensed, love circulated, faith rewarded. These aren't just pretty words. They're spiritual commands that transform money from material object into divine substance, responding to your consciousness. When you speak to money as spirit rather than matter, something profound shifts in how it behaves around you. Money begins to respond like the conscious substance it truly is. It flows toward voices that honor it and away from consciousness that diminishes it. This simple shift in how you address money can literally change its circulation patterns in your life. But there's a hidden barrier that prevents many people from experiencing sustained abundance, even when they understand these principles. It's a deep-seated fear of holding money too long, and it's more common than you might think. Behind the scenes of many financial struggles lies this unconscious terror of actually keeping wealth. Subscribe if you want to continue this journey of understanding money as spiritual substance. There's so much more to explore about how your voice literally shapes your financial experience, and I'd love to have you along for the deeper teachings that are coming. This fear doesn't come from nowhere. It's rooted in generational programming that's been passed down through families for centuries. Your ancestors may have carried beliefs that money is unclean, that wealth corrupts character, that good people shouldn't have too much while others have too little. These beliefs get transmitted through family systems even when they're never spoken aloud. The impact of this programming creates a devastating pattern. People release money too quickly, almost as if it's burning their hands. They get money and immediately find ways to spend it, give it away, or lose it before it can establish roots in their life. This isn't generosity or poor planning. It's unconscious fear preventing the establishment of sustainable abundance. This pattern explains why some people can earn substantial incomes yet never seem to accumulate wealth. The money comes in, but their subconscious programming ensures it goes right back out. They've been trained at a cellular level to believe that holding on to money too long is somehow dangerous or wrong. The journey toward financial freedom requires recognizing and healing this deep-seated fear. You have to give yourself permission not just to receive money, but to keep it, to let it stay, to allow abundance to take up residence in your life without guilt or apology. This transformation begins when you understand that you weren't designed for barely enough. You were created for overflow, for sustainable abundance that serves both your needs and your highest purpose. Write in the comments, "I give myself permission to keep abundance," if you're ready to break this generational pattern. Breaking free from this generational pattern requires understanding a fundamental truth about your divine design. You weren't created for bare sufficiency, for just getting by, for having barely enough to survive. You were fashioned for overflow, designed to experience abundance that spills over into every area of your life and blesses everyone around you. The emotional tension you feel around holding money isn't coming from spiritual truth. It's arising from ancestral trauma and cultural guilt that has nothing to do with your actual worthiness or divine inheritance. Somewhere in your family lineage, decisions were made, beliefs were formed, and fears were embedded that taught survival thinking instead of abundance consciousness. This programming runs so deep that many people feel physically uncomfortable when they have more money than they're accustomed to. Their nervous system literally rejects abundance because it feels unfamiliar, unsafe, or somehow wrong. But this reaction isn't wisdom. It's trauma responding to prosperity as if it were danger. The transformation happens when you recognize that this discomfort around abundance is not your authentic spiritual guidance. It's inherited fear masquerading as humility, generational poverty consciousness disguised as virtue. Your true spiritual nature celebrates abundance, welcomes overflow, and understands that prosperity aligned with purpose serves the highest good. Now, I want to address one of the most destructive beliefs that keeps people trapped in financial limitation. There's this pervasive idea that God punishes possession, that spiritual people shouldn't have wealth, that abundance somehow separates you from divine favor. But here's the hidden truth that religious programming has obscured. God doesn't punish possession. God punishes misuse. When you bless money with clean hands and pure speech, when you receive abundance with gratitude and steward it with wisdom, you increase rather than suffer. The issue was never having money. The issue was what consciousness you bring to money and how you choose to use the power it represents. This revelation completely transforms your relationship with guilt around wealth. You begin to understand that renouncing abundance isn't spiritual. It's actually a form of pride that says you know better than divine intelligence about what you should or shouldn't have. True humility receives what God provides and uses it according to divine guidance. The journey toward financial freedom requires making a conscious decision to renounce guilt and fear while embracing money as divine blessing. This isn't about becoming materialistic or greedy. It's about recognizing that abundance is a tool for fulfilling your highest purpose, a resource for creating positive impact, a means of serving others at a greater level. Behind every financial breakthrough is someone who decided to stop apologizing for prosperity and start stewarding it as sacred responsibility. Write in the comments, "I renounce financial guilt," if you're ready to embrace abundance as divine blessing rather than spiritual burden. This journey of releasing financial guilt leads us to one of the most powerful declarations you can make to reprogram decades of scarcity programming. When that familiar urge arises to spend money quickly, to give it away before you can get attached, to release it before it becomes too much, there's a reversal statement that can literally rewire your nervous system. Look yourself in the mirror and declare with conviction, "I was not made to release too soon. I was made to receive long enough." Let these words sink deep into your consciousness. Repeat them until your body stops tensing when you hold money. Speak them until your nervous system learns to associate abundance with safety rather than danger. This declaration addresses the core programming that keeps people in cycles of financial instability. You begin to understand that the rapid release of money isn't generosity or wisdom. It's often unconscious fear masquerading as virtue. You give yourself permission to hold abundance with dignity rather than apologetic haste. The impact of this mindset shift extends far beyond your bank account. When you learn to receive long enough, you're not just changing your relationship with money. You're developing the capacity to receive love, opportunities, compliments, and blessings in all forms. You're training yourself to be a worthy vessel for divine abundance rather than a leaky bucket that can't hold what it's given. This transformation reveals something profound about the nature of physical money itself. Every bill you hold is not just paper and ink. It's a tangible symbol of spiritual circulation, a physical manifestation of invisible laws in operation. Money is literally the spiritual echo of what you've spoken, believed, and allowed into your consciousness. Here's where the journey becomes intensely practical. Money responds with absolute obedience to the tone of your voice. This isn't metaphorical, it's measurable in real-world results. When you bless money, speak to it with reverence and authority. It begins to multiply in ways that seem miraculous to those operating from material consciousness. But when you curse it about it, or speak to it with fear and resentment, it flees from your vibration like it's repelled by negative energy. This responsiveness of money to consciousness explains why two people can have identical financial strategies, yet experience completely different results. One blesses their seed and watches it grow exponentially. The other curses their circumstances and wonders why abundance feels so elusive. The hidden truth behind every financial breakthrough is this recognition that money is not neutral. It's alive in the sense that it responds to spiritual energy. It flows toward gratitude and away from complaint. It multiplies under blessing and diminishes under curse. Understanding this responsiveness gives you conscious control over your financial experience rather than leaving it to chance or circumstance. Now, let me share with you the exact words that Florence Scovel Shinn taught people to speak over their money, words that have transformed financial destinies for over a century. Write in the comments, "Money responds to my voice," if you're beginning to see this connection between your words and your financial reality. The revelation that your tongue is literally a spiritual wand changes everything about how you approach financial transformation. There is no multiplication without instruction, and your voice is the instrument through which divine law operates in the material realm. This isn't poetry or metaphor, it's practical spiritual technology that has been producing measurable results for centuries. Most people have this relationship with money completely backwards. They wait for money to bless them, hoping that when abundance finally arrives, they'll feel grateful and speak positively about it. But here's the hidden truth that separates those who struggle from those who prosper. We don't wait for money to bless us. We bless it first. Your voice literally trains your currency. Every word you speak to or about money is programming its behavior in your life. When you complain about bills, curse your bank balance, or speak fearfully about financial challenges, you're training money to be elusive, scarce, and problematic. But when you bless money before it appears, speak to it with authority and gratitude. You're instructing your wallet to respond according to spiritual law, rather than material limitation. This understanding transforms every interaction with money into an opportunity for conscious creation. You're not just spending or saving, you're speaking instruction into substance, directing divine circulation through the power of your aligned voice. Now let me share something crucial about developing this spiritual authority over money. Frequency and rhythm matter more than intensity. Just like training a muscle requires consistent repetition rather than occasional bursts of effort, your tongue must be trained through daily, faithful speaking rather than sporadic declarations during financial crises. The impact of daily declaration practice creates momentum that builds over time. Each day that you speak blessing over your money, gratitude for your supply, and authority over your circumstances, you're literally creating neural pathways that support abundance consciousness. You're training your nervous system to expect prosperity rather than scarcity. This daily practice isn't about perfectionism or rigid routine. It's about creating rhythm in your relationship with divine substance. Some days your declarations might be whispered gratitude over coffee money. Other days, they might be bold proclamations over business income. What matters is the consistency of treating money as responsive spiritual substance rather than dead material object. Behind the scenes of every sustained financial breakthrough, you'll find someone who made this daily practice non-negotiable. They understood that sporadic spiritual authority produces sporadic results, but consistent daily instruction creates patterns that attract wealth automatically. This journey of training your tongue reveals that transformation happens in the small moments, the daily decisions to speak blessing rather than complaint, authority rather than victimhood. Write in the comments, "I choose daily blessing," if you're ready to make this consistent practice part of your financial transformation. This daily practice of blessing money reveals a profound principle that most people miss entirely. The spiritual law of multiplication responds to atmosphere and tone of dominion rather than amounts. This means you should bless a $10 bill with exactly the same reverence, the same spiritual authority, the same grateful recognition that you would show $1,000,000. Most people make the mistake of treating small amounts casually while reserving their spiritual reverence for larger sums. They speak blessing over significant income, but ignore or complain about smaller expenses. But here's the hidden truth that changes everything. Money doesn't know its own amount. It only knows the consciousness that touches it. When you speak to money as an honored guest, as sacred substance deserving of respect regardless of denomination, you create an energetic atmosphere that attracts flow toward voices that treat money as sacred rather than ordinary. The universe begins directing abundance toward people who demonstrate consistent reverence for divine substance in all its forms. This transformation in how you treat money creates a ripple effect that extends far beyond your immediate circumstances. Every time you bless a small amount with the same dignity you'd show a large amount, you're programming your consciousness for abundance at every level. You're training yourself to be a worthy steward of greater resources by honoring smaller ones. The impact of this principle becomes clear when you look at the greatest demonstration of multiplication in recorded history. Jesus, faced with 5 loaves and 2 fish to feed thousands of people, didn't wait for more resources to appear. He didn't analyze the impossibility of the situation or ask for different circumstances. Instead, he took what seemed insufficient and spoke blessing over it until it expanded. This provides the divine template for how abundance actually works. Jesus demonstrated that multiplication happens not after resources increase, but after blessing is spoken. He looked up, gave thanks, and declared divine provision over limited substance. The miracle wasn't that more food appeared from nowhere. The miracle was that blessing transformed scarcity into abundance through the power of spoken word. This biblical example reveals something revolutionary about your own financial journey. You don't need to wait for your income to increase before you start speaking blessing. You don't need larger amounts before you begin treating money as sacred substance. The multiplication begins the moment you speak divine authority over whatever you currently hold. Behind every sustained financial breakthrough is someone who understood this principle and applied it consistently. They blessed their seed before it became harvest. They spoke provision over lack. They treated limited resources as divine substance, waiting for instruction rather than evidence of insufficiency. Write in the comments, "I bless my seed," if you're ready to follow this divine template for multiplication in your own financial experience. Following this divine template leads us to understand something extraordinary about the power of spoken word. Your words are not just sounds that disappear into the air. They are literal containers for increase. When you speak over money with faith, with authority, with spiritual conviction, you're actually creating a mold for more abundance to flow into your experience. This revelation transforms how you think about every declaration you make. You're not just expressing thoughts or feelings, you're building a landing place for overflow. Your phrases literally construct the invisible structure through which divine supply flows into your material reality. Every time you speak blessing over money, you're expanding the container through which abundance can reach you. This understanding explains why some people seem to effortlessly attract financial opportunities while others struggle despite their efforts. The difference isn't luck or background or even strategy. It's the size and quality of the container they've built with their words. Those who speak consistently about abundance, who bless their resources regularly, who treat money as divine substance through their language, create vast containers for increase. Those who complain, worry, or speak limitation create tiny vessels that can barely hold what they already have. The impact of recognizing words as vessels changes everything about your daily conversation. You become conscious of every phrase, every casual comment about money, every offhand remark about your financial situation. You realize that you're either building or destroying your capacity to receive through the words you choose. Now I want to share with you a specific ritual that Florence Scovel Shinn taught for creating sacred covenant with money. This isn't superstition or empty ceremony, it's spiritual alignment that creates measurable results in your financial experience. The ritual begins with cleaning your space, making the environment where you'll speak holy. This isn't about perfection, but about intention. You're setting apart time and space for divine transaction. Next, you hold cash in your left hand, the receiving hand that connects to the heart center. Your right hand goes over your heart, creating a circuit between receiving and giving, between abundance and gratitude. Then comes the speaking, 7 declarations of blessing over the money, 7 repetitions of divine instruction. 7 represents completion in spiritual law, the full cycle of creation. As you speak, you're not hoping or wishing, you're commanding substance to respond according to divine order. The ritual closes with Amen and multiply, sealing your declaration and releasing the money into circulation with the expectation of increase. This isn't about controlling outcomes, but about aligning with spiritual law. This sacred process creates covenant between your consciousness and divine substance, establishing your role as conscious steward rather than unconscious victim of financial circumstances. Write in the comments, "I create sacred covenant," if you're ready to establish this formal relationship with abundance through conscious ritual. This sacred covenant with money produces real-world transformations that demonstrate the power of consciousness over circumstances. Let me share a testimony that perfectly illustrates how this spiritual understanding translates into tangible results. There was a woman who found herself down to her last $10 with rent due in just a few days. Most people in that situation would panic, would hold that money with trembling hands while their mind raced through worst-case scenarios. The natural human response would be to treat that $10 bill as evidence of failure, as proof that she was behind, struggling, barely surviving. But this woman had learned the principle we've been exploring. Instead of approaching her last $10 with fear and desperation, she made a conscious decision to see it differently. She held that bill and spoke to it as divine supply in motion rather than her final resource. She blessed it as seed rather than cursing it as insufficiency. The transformation in her consciousness around that money created an immediate shift in her energetic frequency. Instead of vibrating scarcity and panic, she began resonating with gratitude and expectation. She wasn't pretending everything was fine. She was choosing to align with spiritual law rather than material appearance. Within just a few days, something unexpected happened. An old company she'd forgotten about contacted her regarding a billing error from months earlier. They were issuing a refund for an overpayment, $210. This wasn't coincidence or luck. This was the direct result of blessing seed instead of mourning. Circumstances, of speaking to money as divine substance rather than treating it as material limitation. This story reveals something profound about the energetic mechanics of abundance. When you bless money instead of fearing it, you're literally cleansing the energetic river between yourself and your divine supply. Every time you speak blessing over money, you're removing blockages that have been preventing the flow of abundance into your experience. These blockages often run deeper than personal beliefs. Behind the scenes of many financial struggles lie generational curses, inherited patterns of scarcity thinking, poverty consciousness, and fear around money that have been passed down through family lines for generations. When you begin blessing money consistently, you're not just changing your own financial reality, you're breaking ancestral patterns that may have limited your family for decades. The impact of this energetic cleansing transforms money from a guilty secret into bold abundance that multiplies openly. Instead of money being something you hide, worry about, or feel ashamed of, it becomes a celebration of divine provision flowing through your life. This journey toward financial transformation requires understanding that your personal money story is connected to larger patterns of consciousness that extend far beyond your individual experience. Write in the comments, "I break generational patterns," if you're ready to cleanse your own energetic river and establish new patterns of abundance. Breaking these generational patterns leads us to 3 specific declarations that completely rewire your relationship with money at the deepest level. These aren't just positive affirmations or hopeful thinking. They're spiritual commands that shift your entire approach from pursuit to attraction, from begging to commanding. The first declaration transforms how you release money. "Every dollar I touch returns to me multiplied." When you speak this over money before spending it, you're not just making a purchase, you're seeding the universe with expectation of increase. You're programming every transaction as an investment in your own abundance rather than a loss of resources. The second phrase revolutionizes your approach to acquiring wealth. I do not chase, I magnetize. This single statement breaks the exhausting cycle of pursuing money through desperation and effort. Instead of running after opportunities with anxiety, you begin attracting them through aligned consciousness. You become the center of abundance rather than someone on the periphery trying to get in. The third declaration establishes the fundamental law of reciprocity. What I bless blesses me back. This transforms every interaction with money into a sacred exchange. When you bless your bills, your income, your investments, you're creating a feedback loop where the universe responds to your blessing with increased blessing. These three phrases work together to create a complete transformation in your financial consciousness. They reprogram decades of scarcity thinking and replace it with abundance authority. But speaking these declarations randomly won't create lasting change. They need to be anchored in your consciousness through intentional practice. This brings us to one of the most powerful techniques for embedding these new patterns deep into your subconscious mind. The mirror cash activation combines visual programming with spoken declaration to rewrite your self-image in relationship to abundance. Standing before a mirror while holding cash and declaring, "This reflection is wealth returning to me in every form," does something extraordinary. You're simultaneously programming both your reflection and your reception. Your subconscious mind, which thinks in images, begins to associate your face with abundance rather than struggle. The impact of this practice extends far beyond the moments you spend at the mirror. Every time you see your reflection throughout the day, your subconscious remembers the image of yourself with money, the sound of your voice declaring abundance, the feeling of holding wealth with confidence rather than fear. This technique works because it addresses the hidden truth that most financial limitations exist in self-image rather than external circumstances. Behind every pattern of financial struggle is someone who doesn't truly see themselves as worthy of abundance. Write in the comments, "I see myself with wealth," if you're ready to reprogram your reflection and transform your financial self-image. This transformation of self-image through mirror work inevitably brings up one of the biggest challenges in developing abundance consciousness: what to do when doubt creeps in. No matter how committed you are to these principles, there will be moments when your logical mind questions whether this really works, when old patterns of thinking try to reassert themselves. When doubt appears, there's a specific substitution technique that instantly dissolves fear and replaces questioning with divine certainty. Instead of entertaining the doubt or trying to argue with it logically, immediately declare, "This word never returns void." This phrase is taken directly from Isaiah 55:11, where God promises that His word will accomplish what it's sent to do. This substitution works because it shifts your focus from human uncertainty to divine contract. You're not depending on your ability to make things happen. You're relying on the spiritual law that governs how spoken word creates reality. Every time doubt tries to undermine your declarations, this phrase reminds you that you're working with universal principles rather than personal willpower. The impact of this technique extends beyond just managing doubt. It trains your mind to immediately replace limiting thoughts with empowering truth. Over time, doubt appears less frequently because your consciousness becomes saturated with certainty rather than uncertainty. But handling occasional doubt is just one aspect of developing true financial mastery. The deeper transformation requires developing disciplined speech patterns that consistently support abundance rather than unconsciously sabotaging it. Most people have no idea how frequently they speak limitation into their financial experience. Phrases like, "I can't afford it," "money goes too fast," and "I'm broke" might seem like harmless observations, but in the realm of spiritual law, there is no neutral language. Every sentence you speak either multiplies your abundance or subtracts from it. These seemingly innocent phrases are actually powerful declarations that program your subconscious mind and direct universal energy. When you say, "I can't afford it," you're not just describing a temporary situation, you're declaring an identity of limitation. When you complain that money goes too fast, you're programming instability into your financial experience. The journey towards sustained abundance requires becoming conscious of every phrase you speak about money and deliberately replacing limitation language with multiplication language. Instead of, "I can't afford it," you learn to say, "If this is mine by divine right, it will appear in perfect timing." Rather than "money goes too fast," you declare, "Money flows to me and remains under divine direction." This discipline of speech isn't about pretending or denying reality. It's about recognizing that your words are constantly creating your reality. Behind every financial breakthrough is someone who took control of their vocabulary around money. Write in the comments, "I choose multiplication language," if you're ready to transform your daily speech patterns around money. This disciplined approach to language transforms how you handle every financial transaction, especially during challenging moments when old patterns try to reassert themselves. Let me share a powerful testimony that demonstrates how blessing money before spending creates miraculous shifts in circumstances. There was a man facing a rent crisis with only enough money to cover half of what he owed. The natural human response would be to hold that money with desperate fear, to see it as his survival fund, his last hope before potential disaster. But this man had learned to see money differently. Instead of approaching his limited funds with panic, he made a conscious decision to bless that money as seed. Rather than treating it as a survival fund, he spoke multiplication over his bills rather than cursing his circumstances. He declared that his rent payment was an investment in divine circulation rather than a loss of precious resources. This shift in consciousness around his spending created an immediate transformation in his energetic frequency. Within 48 hours, unexpected opportunities began appearing. A former client reached out about a new project. A friend mentioned a business connection. An old invoice was suddenly paid. He didn't just cover his rent. He doubled the amount he needed through opportunities that seemed to materialize from nowhere. The hidden truth this story reveals is that our approach to spending money determines what flows back to us. Most people spend from fear, clutching their resources and releasing them with anxiety and resentment. But when you bless money before spending it, when you declare multiplication over your outflow, you're programming circulation rather than loss. This principle leads us to understand something fundamental about the nature of money itself. It's meant to move, not be clutched in fear. Money is spiritual circulation, divine compensation in motion. When we try to hoard it out of anxiety, when we grasp it desperately, we're actually working against its natural rhythm. The transformation happens when you learn to release money with blessing rather than reluctance, when you spend in rhythm with trust rather than terror. This triggers what Jesus called the law of giving. Give, and it shall be given unto you, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. Behind every pattern of financial stagnation is someone who's trying to stop the flow out of fear. They hold on to money so tightly that new money can't find room to enter their experience. They spend with such anxiety that they program lack into every transaction. But when you understand circulation as a spiritual principle, spending becomes a form of seeding the universe. Every dollar you release with blessing becomes a messenger carrying your faith into the quantum field of possibility. Write in the comments, "I release with blessing," if you're ready to transform spending from fearful loss into faithful circulation. Understanding money as spiritual circulation opens up practices that work with your subconscious mind during the hours when it's most receptive to new programming. One of the most powerful techniques involves what happens in those final moments before sleep, when your conscious mind releases control and your deeper awareness becomes accessible to spiritual instruction. There's a bedtime ritual that has transformed countless financial destinies by programming abundance into the subconscious while you sleep. You take any amount of cash, even a single dollar, and place it gently under your pillow. This isn't superstition. It's creating a physical point of contact with abundance while your mind descends into its most receptive state. As you settle into bed with money beneath your pillow, you speak a specific declaration that seeds your subconscious with expectation of increase. I lay down in increase. I rest in divine provision. I rise in multiplied favor. These aren't just words you're speaking into the air. They're instructions your subconscious mind receives and begins organizing reality to match. The impact of this practice works through the principle that your last conscious thoughts before sleep become the material your subconscious works with throughout the night. Instead of falling asleep, worried about bills or rehearsing financial fears, you're programming your deepest mind with abundance consciousness. While you sleep, invisible forces begin aligning opportunities, opening channels, and preparing pathways for increased flow. This bedtime ritual leads naturally into a more comprehensive transformation that requires consistent daily practice. There's a 7-day sacred experiment that creates profound shifts in both your relationship with money and your spiritual identity around abundance. For 7 consecutive days, you hold cash each morning and declare with conviction, "This cash is holy, and it multiplies by my word." This isn't about the amount you hold. It's about the authority with which you speak to divine substance. Whether it's a crumpled $5 bill or a crisp 100, you're establishing your role as conscious director of spiritual circulation. The journey of these 7 days creates momentum that builds exponentially. Each morning that you speak dominion over money, you're not just affecting that particular transaction, you're rewiring neural pathways, establishing new patterns of expectation, training your nervous system to associate your voice with financial authority rather than financial anxiety. Behind the scenes of this practice, something profound happens to your spiritual identity. You stop being someone who hopes money will come and become someone who commands money to flow. You transition from financial victim to abundance master through the simple act of daily declaration. The transformation that occurs during these 7 days extends far beyond your bank account into every area where you've been accepting limitation instead of exercising spiritual authority. Write in the comments, "I commit to 7 days," if you're ready to undertake this sacred experiment and transform your financial identity through daily practice. This 7-day journey of establishing spiritual authority inevitably brings up one of the most crucial obstacles that prevents sustained abundance: the weight of financial guilt and shame from past decisions. Before you can fully step into your identity as a master of divine circulation, there's often a need to release the burden of previous financial mistakes that continue to create energetic interference with current prosperity. Most people carry an invisible backpack filled with regret about money they've wasted, opportunities they've missed, debts they've accumulated, or poor choices they've made. This guilt acts like static on a radio frequency, disrupting the clear signal between your declarations and their manifestation. No matter how powerfully you speak to money in the present, the shame from the past continues whispering that you don't deserve abundance. The transformation requires a conscious act of financial forgiveness that clears this energetic debris. You place your hand over your heart and speak directly to your own soul. "I forgive myself. I release myself. I redeem this vessel for divine circulation." This isn't just emotional healing, it's spiritual cleansing that removes blocks to current and future abundance. When you forgive your financial past, you're not excusing poor decisions or pretending mistakes didn't happen. You're choosing to stop allowing yesterday's choices to sabotage today's possibilities. You're declaring that regardless of what you've done with money before, you're now available to be a clear channel for divine circulation. The impact of this forgiveness creates immediate space for new patterns to establish themselves. Without the weight of shame dragging down your consciousness, your declarations carry more power, your expectations rise naturally, and your identity shifts from someone who's made mistakes to someone who's learned wisdom. This cleansing of financial shame leads us to one of the most liberating principles in all of abundance consciousness. You don't have to wait for more before you start speaking wealth. You don't need larger amounts before you begin blessing what you hold. The multiplication begins the moment you bless what seems insufficient. Jesus demonstrated this perfectly with the loaves and fishes. Faced with 5 loaves and 2 fish to feed thousands, he didn't wait for more resources to appear. He didn't postpone the blessing until adequate supplies arrived. Instead, he blessed what seemed like not enough, and that blessing became the catalyst for miraculous multiplication. This divine template reveals that heaven releases overflow not when we have much, but when we give thanks for little with the same reverence we would show abundance. The miracle isn't triggered by the amount, but by the consciousness that blesses regardless of appearance. Behind every financial breakthrough is someone who learned to bless their seed before it became harvest, to speak abundance over scarcity, to treat limited resources as divine substance waiting for instruction. Write in the comments, "I bless what I have now," if you're ready to stop waiting for more before you start speaking wealth over what's already in your hands. Blessing what you have now leads us to understand that every single transaction you make is either a spiritual contraction or expansion. There is no neutral spending in the realm of consciousness. Every time money leaves your hands, you're either programming scarcity through fearful release or seeding abundance through faithful circulation. This revelation transforms how you approach every purchase, every bill payment, every financial exchange. Instead of unconsciously spending with anxiety or resentment, you begin to sanctify each transaction by speaking, "This returns multiplied," as money leaves your hands. This simple phrase transforms circulation into scripture, making every purchase a spiritual investment rather than a loss. The impact of this practice reaches far beyond the immediate transaction. When you consistently speak multiplication over your spending, you're programming the universe to respond to your faith rather than your fear. You're establishing a rhythm of expectation that draws increased resources towards someone who treats money as divine circulation rather than material limitation. This transformation of spending consciousness leads to extraordinary changes in how money flows through your life. Let me share a testimony that perfectly demonstrates the power of shifting from fearful spending to faithful circulation. There was a woman who dreaded bill-paying day every month. The rent, utilities, groceries, each payment felt like loss, like evidence that she was shrinking rather than expanding. Her approach to bills was filled with anxiety and resentment, unconsciously programming contraction into every financial obligation. But then she learned to transform bill paying from fearful loss into joyful circulation. Instead of paying bills with dread, she began declaring over each payment, "This bill is paid in love. This money returns multiplied." She stopped seeing bills as drains on her resources and started treating them as seeds being planted in the field of circulation. The shift in her consciousness around spending created an immediate transformation in her energetic frequency. Instead of vibrating scarcity with every payment, she began resonating abundance through faithful release. Within just 3 weeks of this new practice, her supervisor unexpectedly called her into the office to offer a substantial raise, retroactive to the beginning of the month. This wasn't coincidence or luck. It was the direct result of transforming her vibration around money circulation. When she stopped approaching bills as evidence of lack and started treating them as opportunities for faithful seeding, the universe responded to her new frequency with increased resources. Behind the scenes of this transformation was a fundamental shift in understanding that money doesn't disappear when you spend it. It circulates according to the consciousness with which you release it. Write in the comments, "I transform my spending," if you're ready to turn every transaction into a spiritual investment through conscious declaration. Transforming your spending consciousness through conscious declaration creates momentum that naturally leads to establishing daily practices that align your voice with divine economy. There are 7 sacred declarations that, when spoken consistently, create an unshakable foundation for abundance consciousness that permeates every aspect of your financial experience. These declarations work because they reprogram your identity at the cellular level. When you speak, "My money listens to my mouth," you're establishing your role as conscious director rather than unconscious victim of financial circumstances. "What I touch turns to treasure," transforms your very presence into a blessing that elevates whatever comes under your influence. The declaration, "I magnetize supply," shifts you from someone who chases opportunities to someone who attracts them through aligned consciousness. "I am a speaking vault of increase," establishes your identity as a container and amplifier of divine abundance rather than a person struggling to get by. The impact of speaking these declarations daily creates a compound effect in your consciousness. Each repetition builds upon the previous one, strengthening neural pathways that support abundance thinking while weakening old patterns of limitation. Over time, these phrases become more than words you speak. They become the truth of who you are. This daily practice of declaration prepares you for the ultimate transformation ritual that seals your journey from financial fear to spiritual mastery. There's a midnight mirror covenant that creates a sacred agreement between your consciousness and divine substance, establishing you as conscious steward of abundance rather than unconscious victim of circumstances. At midnight, the symbolic hour of transition and transformation, you stand before a mirror holding cash while speaking words that fundamentally alter your relationship with money forever. The darkness around you represents the unseen realm where all manifestation begins, while your reflection shows the visible evidence of spiritual authority taking physical form. In this sacred moment, you declare with absolute conviction, "In my hands, wealth obeys the word. Through my mouth, abundance is commanded. I now multiply by faith, not fear." These aren't affirmations or hopeful thinking. They're spiritual commands that establish covenant between your consciousness and divine law. The hidden truth behind this midnight ritual is that transformation happens in the liminal spaces, the threshold moments where one reality ends and another begins. By choosing to perform this covenant at midnight, you're working with the natural rhythm of renewal that governs all creation. This final ritual doesn't just change how you think about money. It fundamentally rewrites your spiritual DNA around abundance, establishing you as someone who speaks wealth into existence rather than waiting for it to appear. This midnight covenant represents the completion of a profound transformation that began the moment you first understood money as condensed belief rather than mere paper. You've journeyed from seeing yourself as someone who hopes for abundance to someone who commands it through spiritual authority. That's not a small shift. That's a fundamental rewiring of your relationship with divine substance. If you've made it this far, something inside you recognizes the truth of these principles. You're not here by accident. These teachings found you because you're ready to step into a completely different level of financial mastery, one that operates according to spiritual law rather than material limitation. I create content like this because I believe there are people who are ready to move beyond traditional financial advice into the realm of conscious abundance creation. If this resonates with your spirit, if you feel like you've discovered something that could change everything about how money flows in your life, then subscribe to this channel. There's so much more depth to explore in understanding how consciousness creates financial reality. Put in the comments, "This message was meant for me," if you feel like these teachings landed in your life at exactly the right moment. I love seeing who's part of this community of people committed to spiritual abundance rather than material struggle. And if this content created value for you, if it shifted something in your understanding or gave you practical tools you can use immediately, a simple like helps this message reach others who are searching for the same transformation you've experienced today. There's a video right here that goes even deeper into the practical application of these principles. It's about the specific words that multiply money versus the phrases that repel it. Click and continue with me over there, because what you've learned today is just the beginning of what's possible when you truly understand money as spiritual substance. The universe has been waiting for you to remember who you really are. Now you know.